Again, perhaps you and I were wrong about this team. I realize we've said this a few times in the last few weeks, but I think we may need to say it again. Deion Sanders in Colorado, it appears, maybe on the verge of flipping one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in the 2025 class. So Julian Lewis from Carrollton, Georgia, has been committed to USC 4 months. But Colorado has never given up on him. Indiana's never given up on him. On Monday, On3, Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons, recruiting experts, the best in the business, they logged expert predictions for Colorado to flip Julian Lewis to their 2025 class. Let's play that clip from the Wiltfong whip around on the On3 Recruits channel. Do we not have that clip? Okay. We will have that clip shortly. But Steve Wiltfong, the best recruiting reporter in the biz, he is reporting that he believes Julian Lewis will flip to Colorado. Julian Lewis was supposed to go to the Indiana-Michigan game on an official visit, Ari, and he did not. He's gone to Colorado a bunch of times, and it looks like USC may be moving on to Husan Longstreet, the Texas A&M commit. So this could be very interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here with Lewis, so let's take our time. Especially because like this is all really exciting for Colorado, but like I also think there's an interesting USC angle here too, because like that is supposed to be the one thing that Lincoln Riley does really well, and yeah, we'll get to that. But first, not to relitigate or open up my criticisms of Deion Sanders, but we have to at least illustrate them so I can apologize. My number one criticism of Deion Sanders was never that he can't coach, that he can't fill out a staff, that he can't harbor a good environment for his players, that he cannot promote his players' brands, all the wonderful things that he could do. I've always been on board with. The thing that irritated me about Deion Sanders' plan was that I thought his number one qualification for being a college football coach at this level, and even to a certain extent, Jackson State, was his fame, his notoriety, and the way he moves the needle in talent accumulation. It still bothers me that he doesn't go on visits and engage in the recruiting realm of it at the high school level the same way that his peers do. I think that Colorado has a very high ceiling as it pertains to the type of recruiting classes it could sign in the Big 12, and thus making seasons like this expected, not out of the ordinary. That said, if you are going to flip a 5-star quarterback from USC, that makes me feel like you plan to be there for a while, which I would have bet a lot of money that he wouldn't be there next year, just as a result of the way that
the first take crew's getting him hired by the Cowboys, because that's their dream scenario. Like the first take dream scenario is that Deion Sanders is the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that's going to happen. It certainly seems to me like Deion Sanders is acting very much like he intends to be Colorado's coach in 2025. Here is our guy, Steve Wiltfong, explaining why he's calling this flip with Josh Newberg on the On3 Recruits channel.
No target is bigger on the board right now than quarterback Julian Lewis. He did not show up for his visit in Indiana over the weekend. So what are your sources saying right now on Julian Lewis?
Well, Colorado did not sign a quarterback in the 2024 cycle. Julian Lewis has been their top target here in 2025. He has taken 4 visits to Boulder this calendar year, all 4 trips coming after he committed to USC back in August of 2023. I think there is confidence around Colorado. There always has been, that Julian Lewis will ultimately be in the fold for the Buffaloes. You saw that picture from his official visit where Shedeur Sanders is dropping the keys into his hand, passing the torch, as you would say, from him to Julian Lewis. Colorado is the best chance for him to start as a true freshman. He's been to spring practice. He's been to a game. He was there for the exciting win over Cincinnati. He has seen this program turn around. I think the season, more than anything, has really elevated Colorado's position, because coming into the season, they were a 4-8 football team talking about what they were going to be. Now they're 7-2, and they're in the mix to make the college football playoff, win their conference.
So that is Steve Wiltfong on the Wiltfong Whip Around on the On3 Recruits channel. If you're not subscribed to the On3 Recruits channel, by all means, go subscribe there, because you're finding out about stuff like this as it's happening. That was on Wiltfong Whip Around on Monday, and it is pretty big news, Ari, because this is a guy that Colorado has been pursuing pretty much the entire cycle. And it's interesting because, like, we've talked about how Lincoln Riley recruits quarterbacks at USC. Well, and when he was at Oklahoma, like, he has this guy and that's his guy, and he's not moving off that. But Deion was not giving up on the idea of getting Julian Lewis to Colorado.
Yeah, and like Deion Sanders has proven year after year that he can get a splash, right? Like, every year he's been a head coach, he's got a splash. So this is not on the surface surprising in the sense that, like, he's never done this before. I mean, we're talking about a coach who signed Travis Hunter to a FCS school. So that's great. What I think is interesting is that he's doing it at the most critical position at a time in which a lot of people, including myself, question whether he was in that seat as Colorado's coach for the long haul. That said, I put them in my playoff bracket this week. I couldn't believe that I was doing that, but they earned that. They're good enough to be there, and I think they're going to be there. And he's recruiting quarterback from Georgia away from USC. It's like he's doing the things that you're supposed to do if you want to stay there for a long time. So, like, my temperament as a person in this position is to always acknowledge that when my opinions or takes have been wrong. And I don't know that I'm 100% there in the sense that, like, I think he could do this with 20 kids a cycle instead of one. But I also feel like maybe he is just building it in a way that is possible when I would have thought it was impossible. So, like, I feel like I was wrong about Deion, but maybe I'm wrong about
do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I was definitely wrong about Deion as it pertains to longevity and desire to be a successful coach and all those things.
Do you need breakfast? Because I need breakfast. This is my breakfast today. 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, everything I need in this one bottle. And that's what Huel's about, because they understand you have busy mornings, late nights, you work through lunch, and life does not always have room for a complete balanced meal where you have to go get it or make it. But with Huel, you open the bottle, you drink it, and you have a complete balanced meal. That's Huel, spelled H-U-E-L. It's the world's #1 complete nutrition brand. It's a complete meal in seconds. Just grab it, sip it, and go. No more skip meals or unfulfilling snacks. Huel makes it easy with nutrition that fits into your life. And right now, you can try it with 15% off your order with the code STAPLES at Huel.com. That's Huel.com. The code is STAPLES, 15% off your order. Fuel up the easy way with Huel today.
But I think I was also wrong about what you need to do in order to be a really good team. Now, I don't know that they're going to be able to do it this way and beat Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon and all the teams that get those 15 to 20 really good players a year.
We just watched Ole Miss do it.
Yeah. So that is the second part of this, which is, can Colorado exist enough in the portal to get Juice Wells and Walter Nolan and all those guys the way that Ole Miss did from an NIL standpoint, which is out of his control.
But not with the rev share coming. It's not as out of his control. Like, he's going to have money to spend in the portal that he didn't have before. And yeah, I think that's the part a lot of people are not considering. They're considering that only the schools that have done NIL really well, like Oregon, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas, Ohio State now, that they're going to be the ones that grab all the transfers every year. Well, now everybody's going to have money. And it's not going to be that everybody's going to have the most money. Like Ohio State will still have the most money, and Oregon will still have the most money, and Tennessee will still have the most money. But everybody's going to have some money now. Whereas you had schools before, and Colorado, I think, would fall into this category where they didn't really have a lot of NIL money to spend. They've spent, like, this is where I will definitely give flowers. They spent it well this season. Much better than last season. So I don't know that they need to do this with 20 high school players a year. They might only need to do it with 5 or 10. And if you look, like Jordan Seaton is starting as a freshman. That was their splash recruit last year, where they #1 offensive tackle recruit in the country. He's starting. He's getting better every week. Draylon Miller is a freshman right now that they're carving out kind of a Deebo Samuel kind of role for him on the offense, which is pretty cool. And so they're showing these kids that if they come, there's playing time available. And I think with Julian Lewis, it's an obvious thing. They don't have an heir apparent on the roster for Shedeur. So somebody's got to start at QB for them next year. Why not Julian Lewis?
Yeah, also, too, I feel like the quarterback position, you probably could get the best discount because being the quarterback at Deion Sanders, Colorado, is probably a pretty lucrative position just based on the brand that you create doing that. The thing that I think is interesting is, and I don't even know if it's funny that we're having the conversation, and the fact that we're even having it shows that I was wrong. But Andy, you mentioned Ole Miss, right? Like we watched go out and play Georgia and beat the crap out of them. And Ole Miss got to this point in large part because of the players they brought in through the portal in the offseason. But the thing that you have to also acknowledge is that through the last 4 recruiting cycles, the lowest rated class that Ole Miss has signed is 22nd. Like they're still bringing in a lot of players at the high school level, and some of them are leaving and some of them are staying, but they are bringing a baseline of talent year over year that gives them the foundation on their roster to be able to accentuate the roster well enough to beat Georgia. And I don't know if the Colorado expectation should be to go beat Georgia. That's not even a fair thing to be talking about in year 2 of Colorado's existence. My whole thought process with Deion, and it remains to be the case, is that if he were able to sign a top 22, 20, 17, 24 classes in 4 consecutive years and then do what he's been doing in the portal, Colorado might actually be a national championship contender. Now, maybe we're building to that, but I also, maybe Deion will be the first coach ever to sign a top 20 class without doing it traditionally too, which you have to stay open to. So,
well, and this is something, and we've talked about this internally at On3. I'm sure the other services have talked about it as well. Reevaluating how we rank classes, because your portal class now has to be considered in that. And it really needs to, like, the totality of your roster needs to be considered, and not necessarily because we actually have a chance to do it more accurately now, because it used to be those cumulative totals were still based on what they were ranked coming out of high school. I think now that we'll have these guys in the portal where we've had a chance to see them play in college and we can actually evaluate them better as college football players, it allows us to create a more accurate total talent evaluation for a roster. Now, it's not necessarily an easy process to meld those things together and try to rank them, but I do think that would be a good way to try to do it, because you know, where is Ole Miss's roster from a talent standpoint? You and I stood on that field on Saturday and said this is a top 5 roster in the whole country, that if they get in the playoff, they can go toe-to-toe with any team physically. So
let me put you on a spot.
But their high school recruiting would not tell you that.
For sure. Let me put you on the spot, and I don't think there's any way for you to accurately answer this. It's just an estimation and a guess, and it's a podcast, and we're having fun.
Yeah.
If you had to guess about Colorado's cumulative talent as it pertains to the whole picture, portal and high school, where do you think that would rank if you had to guess?
In the country?
Yeah.
I would think it would be probably in the low 20s. because you have the very high top end talent that pulls it up. And then you have some good players that you're seeing play well now.
They have 2 5-stars on their team, right? Or am I forgetting anyone?
They have Jordan Seaton and Travis Hunter, the 2 5-stars, yeah. And then Shedeur was a 4-star.
But they're also getting high-end production from guys like LeJohntay Wester and Jimmy Horn.
And LeJohntay Wester started at Florida Atlantic, but when LeJohntay Wester left Florida Atlantic, you knew he was a good college football player. Like, he was an excellent receiver at Florida Atlantic.
The problem with that is, how do you rank that? Like, that's going to be the number one battle that all the services have of, like, if you go get a player in the portal, like, how do you rank a player who hasn't played yet, who, you know, it may be a lot of reporting of like, hey, he wasn't doing things the right way, or he was great, we just had too many people in his position. Like, a lot of times, like Jordan Addison going to USC, I think we knew that they got a really
he won the Bolitnikoff the year before.
We knew, like, so, but I think that the Jordan Addisons of the world are probably rarer. It's the people that you don't really see. Like, for instance, how would you rate the edge rushers that Colorado brought in? I mean, hell, how do you even rate Colorado's entire roster flip? They flipped 50 players off their team. Like, can you imagine trying to accurately rank that?
Well, I think if we were ranking defensive lines right now, or if we were ranking edge rusher groups, like we just did edge rusher groups, obviously South Carolina would be way up there. Ohio State would be way up there. Tennessee would be way up there. Ole Miss would be way up there. But Colorado would also be way up there. Like, they would be in the top 5 or 10.
But the problem I'm outlining here is that, okay, because they lead the Big 12 in sacks, right? And that's the perfect way to illustrate this. So if you would put Colorado's pass rush in between 15 and 5 somewhere, where do you think that we would have ranked them in August before they played?
We wouldn't. We would have put them. Now, we would have put them probably in the 20s, because you know, like BJ Green, we'd seen him do good things at Arizona. Deion Hayes, we'd seen him at Arizona State. Excuse me. Deion Hayes, we'd seen him do good things at Pitt. So we knew those were good players. I mean, that was what. Remember, if you go back to the videos I made after Big 12 Media Days, I was like, Deion loves his D line, and you can see why. It's his O line that he's worried about, and he was, and now he's less worried about it, clearly. But it is a tough eval, and this is tougher if you're actually paid to coach and take those players and turn them into a team that needs to win right now. And that's the challenge now. It's not just what can you get out of high school. I was talking about this with somebody last night. You know, used to be, if you had a couple down recruiting classes in a row, you were in deep trouble for a long time. Like, you had years. You were going to need years to dig out. You can change it immediately now.
Yeah. Do you still think, when you analyze Colorado, and I'm just like kind of workshopping this thought process with you because I'm going to write about it when we're done, that the number of players that Deion flips from his roster from a year-to-year basis should decrease as he stays there?
Yes, because it will be guys, it'll be more like his guys that he brought in. And, you know, I think one thing that Lane Kiffin has shown you at Ole Miss is you can use the transfer portal to create a base of your own guys, even if they came from somewhere else. You know, Jared Ivey, we don't look at him as a guy who started his career at Georgia Tech. Like, he's an Ole Miss player. He's been at Ole Miss for 3 years now. Mm-hmm. Jackson Dart, we don't look at as a guy who started his career at USC. He's an Ole Miss player. So if Deion gets some of these guys that have 3 years of eligibility left and they come to Colorado, if they're, 2 years from now, we're just looking at them as Colorado players.
Yeah. For sure.
I don't think he's going to go as, like, a lot of it was last year. They had to flip the roster when they got there, and it didn't work out as well as they wanted. So they needed to change. Now they're having some success. So I would think you're not running off a bunch of the guys that are on this roster. Like, you want them back because they've been very successful for you.
Yeah. So I just remember last year too, when Florida State was really, really good, and we were having these types of discussions in November, me and you on separate podcasts, but we were both talking about it. That was kind of like, did Florida State crack the code of how to win without recruiting well? You know,
and they had done that with some, like I said about Ole Miss, with some guys that had been there for a while, like Fabian Lovett. I had almost forgotten that he even played for Mississippi State. Jordan Travis, I had almost forgotten that he played at Louisville. Like that part of it, they had their guys, even if they'd come from somewhere else. And like Jordan Travis, he transferred when Willie Taggart was the coach.
Yeah.
So, like,
what happened?
You still have to build a foundation, whether you get the guys out of the portal or whether you get the guys out of high school. You still do need kind of a foundation of your guys to sustain success.
I also don't know the answer of the number of players that Colorado brought in that have remaining eligibility after this year. Like, is that a high percentage of guys?
I'm looking at the depth chart. They're pretty old in terms of the guys who are, but you know, offensive line, they've got a freshman starting, they've got a sophomore starting. Like most good teams only bring back a couple starting offensive linemen.
Yeah,
because
and Mosley Taylor here,
old offensive linemen tend to be good.
Said that FSUs were all seniors or NFL players, right? And that's true.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it the right way and your plan is to bring guys in who are on your roster for 3 years and you forget where they started, then why did the bottom fall out? Like you have to do that every single year. Like it doesn't it's still, if you're not going to recruit high school kids at a high level or sign a bunch of kids, then you have to use the portal as your recruiting classes. You have to replenish the talent or the bottom will fall out.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like this defensive line that we're talking about with Colorado, that's so great. They will have to replenish that next year.
Yeah. And they're going to have to replenish Travis Hunter.
It will not be,
and they're going to have to replenish Shedeur Sanders. And I don't know what is going to happen with some of those receivers outside of Hunter. But like, that's the thing. It's like, I think that we have proven definitively, and Deion is the latest example of that you can build a winner through the portal for a given year. What we have not proven definitively is that you can build a consistent winner through the portal year over year, which maybe that's fair because with the portal era is only, 3 years old? And we haven't had enough data yet. So maybe we'll get there. But everybody who has been very good as a result of key portal acquisitions, whether they're there for 1 year or two, has seen the bottom fall out. Like even Mel Tucker's Michigan State is not the same thing. Yeah. And obviously other things happen there. Like it's not the only thing that happened, but like the second Kenneth Walker walked out the door, they stunk. You know what I mean? Like and in college football, I really do believe, at least in this era now, it used to be which team had 40 top 100 players on its roster. And now, since everybody is kind of working on a thinner layer of talent depth, the teams that have dynamic, game-changing talents get further with those individual players. And like, that's the reason why I'm going to vote for Travis Hunter to win the Heisman, because without Travis Hunter, Colorado might be still pretty good, but Travis Hunter is the engine of that team. And Travis Hunter is going to be on the Patriots next year. So, so like the thing to me is like, and it gets back to my criticism, which is if Deion would have hit the recruiting trail gangbusters from day one there, they might have a player that is ready to step in to that role, and not the alien role that Travis Hunter plays, but a role on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to get two players to do that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if Cormani McClain would have worked out, maybe that would have been what we're talking about, and it didn't. So like the potential is there for him to be Colorado's coach for 20 years and for Colorado to be a badass program for 15 of those years, right? Like I think that he has,
as long as Jerry Jones doesn't get a wild hair.
Is that real, or is that I haven't been paying attention to that at all.
No, that's First Take's fantasy. That's the First Take fantasy.
But I saw Feinbaum was talking about it. Was he on First Take?
Well, he was probably talking about, listen, we should probably do it too. Like if we just put Jerry Jones, Deion Sanders in the headline of this video, it would pop off.
Yeah. I mean, that would be crazy. I saw what Paul Feinbaum said, and I didn't know that if I agreed with it, and I'll kind of paraphrase it. But he said that Deion Sanders is finding out just how hard it is from a talent perspective and a roster perspective to not only be good or get good, but how hard it would be to maintain that. And you can go find his clip if you're interested in what he said. But like, I actually don't know if this is the time to say that. I think that Deion Sanders is on the verge of finding out.
Some of their younger guys are playing really well. Like, I just, I think they're probably doing okay. I think they're now. Look, if you're going to be relying on a true freshman quarterback next year, if Julian Lewis is the guy, like that, there's obviously a risk inherent in that. But that's not unique to Colorado. That's every program. Like you try to get the best person you can, and you hope that works out. Like I'm not going to ding him for that because that's honestly what everybody's doing. There's a bunch of programs right now that are good that don't have a clue what they're going to do at quarterback next year.
Also, starting a 5-star player who ranks in the top 50 or the top 25 nationally is not the biggest problem in the Big 12 right now. I think that they would be fine if that happened.